Prison inmates, what's the worst thing you saw inside? I am 19 years old and was recently released from an Alabama prison where I spent 2 years inside. The Alabama prisons are a horrible place. You're probably wondering how I ended up in prison at such a young age? When I was 17, my father forced me to steal from people because we didn't have any money. I did not want to do it, my father forced me to. I begged and pleaded with him. I ended up getting caught and arrested, and the next 2 years of my life would be some of the worst imaginable. The first place I went was one of the worst. The juvenile wedge in the mobile metro jail. A wedge holds 8 cells and is supposed to only hold 2 juveniles per cell as there are only 2 bunks. But there were sometimes up to 4 people per cell, forcing kids to sleep on the mats on the floor and right near the toilet. The 16 and 17-year-olds in Alabama jails are horrible and the most violent of all inmates. Alabama is a very rough place, especially the projects. I was in this jail with the teens who were the ones that committed the worst crimes: first-degree robberies, murders, arson, intimate assault, and abuse. Inmates always attempted to steal from me and rob me, and literally terrorize me, throwing piss on me, or spitting in my drinking cup. The first week there, I bought a $20 phone card, and when I came back to my cell the other kids were waiting for me in there, predators. They had put a towel over the cell's only light, to darken the cell, so the guards couldn't see what was about to happen. And they surrounded me once I had walked back into the cell. I told them I would not give them the phone card, I actually intimidated them. I was grabbed from behind, and put into a choke hold, then I blacked out. I woke up from underneath the steel metal desk with blood dripping down the side of my face. The phone card was gone. After that, I spent an entire year in a cell by myself, because I had to be separated from them. Throughout that amount of time, I saw over 100 fights and was sleep deprived quite a lot. The juveniles would scream and yell and cuss each other out all the time. They were animals. They would talk about the most hateful, vile things, and how gangster they were, substance dealing, robbing, and killing. It was utterly saddening. Especially at night, they would beat on the metal over and over and over, and rap, all of them together. During the time I was in jail, I heard news about my father. Months later, a correctional officer actually was the one to give me news that my father had been arrested himself. He had stolen from more people, the same exact way he had made me do it. And was in jail too. The juvenile wedge was located right next to the sewer slide wedge. The loudest wedge in the entire jail. That is where they put the drunks, the crazy psychopaths who had just murdered their whole family, and even more nutjobs. One man gouged his father's eyes out with a spoon. They would beat constantly and scream and moan all night long. I remember specifically the ones who would never stop beating on the clear plexiglass walls of their cells. They were in there naked. All of them. At one time I saw my own father in there after he had gotten jumped in another wedge and his nose broken and both eyes completely blackened. They put him in there for protection. I remember hearing the guards running in there and beating the hell out of those people, and hearing the inmates scream. I was right next to those cells. I lost lots of sleep over the constant noise. Banging over and over and over, for hours, all night. It was just like a lunatic asylum. I did read a lot, it was my only solace then. Along with learning, I yearned to read and learn. I was constantly a target because I was the only white boy there. I was deeply miserable, and so I got the doctors to finally give me sleep medicine after many months, Remerons. They made me feel like I was slow when I took them, but sleepy. They took a very long time to wear off. I started to slide them into the inside of my mouth when the nurse would give them to me, and I would spit them out when I got back to my cell, and hide them in a hole in my inch-thick mat. I had no pillow, just a wool blanket. Before I went to prison and was waiting in limbo in jail, I thought there was a chance that I might be sent to prison. So over a long amount of time, I started to collect those sleeping pills just in case. So I could protect myself, if I was given a long amount of time in prison or whatever. Things got more miserable. I stopped a young black kid from dying in my cell at one point. I turned 18 in jail. After that, I mixed in with the adults. I finally received my time. It was 2 more years. I would be going to prison. I couldn't do it anymore. I was utterly miserable and sad, and I lost the will to want to be alive. I wanted peace, just once in my life. If you call death peace. One night I took all the Remerons I had collected. I first waited for my cellmates to begin playing cards, and then I took around 100 of them, heated up some hot water, crushed up some of the pills, and swallowed them all down. It was the worst, bitter, disgusting taste. I still have a hard time swallowing pills if I ever have to chew them. I wrote a note telling my mother I loved her and wished I could hug her. No one knows the truth or what really happened. No one cares to know. I hadn't seen her in 8 years. I got up on my top bunk and rolled over on my side on my mat. And laid there. I prayed to God, asking to be with him. I commend to you my spirit, Lord. I was completely terrified of going to hell, but I still did it. I was in so much misery. 30 minutes later my body was almost paralyzed. And my body was pulsing and throbbing. I began to feel very sick. I tried as hard as I could to hold my stomach in. But I had to get up and go to the toilet to vomit, and my whole body was almost paralyzed. I could not jump off my rack. I couldn't move. And then I blacked out, into nothingness. Silence. Blackness. There was no bright light. Over the course of that period, while I was in jail, I had many inmates try to hurt me. Later, I woke up in a hospital handcuffed to a stretcher. I was on life support. My cellmates had gotten scared and told the guards, once they had seen me black out. I obviously did not want my cellmates to know what I had done. But I was forced to throw up, and black out. After my ill recovery, I was thrown into the sewer slide wedge, right where I remembered all those people. I soon was shackled and shipped to prison, where there was no AC at all. There is none in the Alabama prisons. Prison is even worse. You are forced to work all day. And the temperatures inside the dorms get to 100+ degrees. Every day, all day long, during the hot long Alabama summers. Misery. I remember pools of sweat collecting on my mat, while I tried to lay down. I would have to strip to my underwear to stay cooler. The other men would look at me, and some would beat their meat at me, while I would sleep, or do it right in front of me. They call it gunning you down. A lot of the time when I would try to take a quick shower, they would all watch me, to see when I would go in. And then go in the shower with me and watch me, and gun me down, while I bathed myself quickly. Quite a dehumanizing thing to have done to you. I wish I could have knocked one of those jerks' heads off. But I knew I had parole coming up, and I might make it, if I never got into any fights or disciplinaries. Which was even worse. Because I needed to stand up for myself. It was so crowded in prison, that there was no privacy. Nowhere. Showers were completely wide open, toilets were in rows of 30 lined up. No stalls, those did not exist. I tried dearly to avoid the showers and the sick people. I saw a lot of sick stuff in there. People used any substances they could possibly get their hands on to indulge themselves. I was in prison for a long time. After 2 years of being in there, and finally making parole, I was released. I realized my weaknesses while in prison, and my puniness as well. A lot of me died slowly inside. I do not think about girls as much. I was a young kid, I had only ever had one girlfriend in 8th grade. I had to drop out of school after that. When I was in prison I longed to just touch a girl's hand, just to have someone love me as a friend. I yearned for a companion, I was so lonely. Words could never express it. My heart felt like it was literally dying. I also missed listening to music so much, I loved music a lot. I don't feel things anymore as much. I tried to feel love and compassion, but my heart has died slowly. I still do love people, and I have tried to keep that alive. I really try my best. And I love to give people gifts with the money I have now. Things don't mean as much at all to me anymore. I am somewhat of a stronger guy now, I fear nothing. I also lift weights and exercise every day, that is one thing I will always do. I am still trying to find what I'm going to do with my life and career. And find meaning in life. I do enjoy computers a lot, evidently. If I had to go through those 2 years again, I don't believe I could do it all over again.